So, how many lost and or unfinished films do you think are really out there? I mean, the ones that no one knows even exist. Think about it. All those nuclear warheads that went unaccounted for after the collapse of the Soviet Union? Scary, right? Now just think about how many weird, bizarre, and uncouth films never saw the light of day. Productions that would make Manos the Hands of Fate look like Follow That Bird in comparison. Years become decades. The crew gets older and older. They don't tell the right people about any of their experiences, so as a result, when they die, nothing gets passed on. No clickbait article, no glib hipster critic mini-doc, nothing. Just the sheer volume of films that were actually finished and released and are now lost to time and poor storage habits alone boggles the mind. But I find myself thinking more about the lost ones. Unfinished, unreleased, unseen. How? Why? The why really keeps me awake at night. At this point, it would be decidedly redundant to say that most people think Hollywood screen legend Yul Brynner retired from films in 1976. Future World and Death Rage rounded out his career. Not exactly a golden charioted send-off, but hardly a trapdoor shoot into a landfill either. That's the common knowledge take of it all, at least. However, if you are like me and enjoy pulling a magnifying glass up to the cracks of someone's acting career, you'll find all kinds of interesting things. And if you make your intentions known in certain circles, you'll get all kinds of interesting people jockeying for your attention. It happened to me almost as if in a dream. And that is what I'm most anxious to tell you about. I'm not so worried that you won't believe me. I'm more concerned that you will. This odd profession has no more room for the curious. It's now just filled with people like me, wishing they could unsee what cannot be unseen under any circumstances. Not even in death. At least, that's what I'm told. So in lieu of that, I must tell you what I know about Yul Brynner's unfinished Christmas horror film, The Demon of Noel Crossing. Ridiculous, right? Maybe not so much as you might think. If you tell me you've heard of it, I will call you a liar, and this exchange will cease faster than it commenced. Good. Good. That's a good answer. We can continue. Now then, if you're ready, I will tell you all I know about Mr. Brynner's shuttered film roll as it was told to me. You'll forgive me if I ramble a few times here and there, or the pitch of my voice changes ever so slightly. It's a recent malady I am coming to terms with. Apologies in advance. I'm not even going to ask you if you've ever heard of D.R. Ford, because I know you haven't. Nevertheless, he was quite a prolific director and producer in the 60s and 70s, even though none of his films ever saw the light of day. Some films were finished, wet prints and all, and some never made it through principal photography. There are stories of all kinds floating about if you really want to look hard enough. I won't waste your time on most of them, as they are for those with heartier stomachs than you or I. Just know that most of them weren't released for good reason. The one that never gets talked about is D.R. Ford's planned Christmas horror film that he was dead set on shooting around and during the actual holiday. Occasion-themed horror films were a scarcity in the 70s, and to actually shoot it on the corresponding holiday, the unions would be apoplectic. That's why the ever-intrepid DRF decided to go non-union and shoot it as a completely independent production. His pockets were deep, and so little was known about him or his background that no one could come up with the right questions to ask about where the money was coming from or why he insisted on shooting on actual Christmas of all times. He had zero intentions of skimping on the budget just because he circumvented the influence of the union. Oh no. Top of the line cast and crew. In fact, a few sources over the years were adamant he spent more on the production as an independent film than he probably would have through the normal cogs and whistles of the grand old Hollywood machine. Go figure. The usual suspects were insisted upon. Donald Pleasance, James Mason, Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. Ford sneered at every recommendation. He knew who he wanted. Yul Brynner. a titan of Hollywood whose star had faded a smidge, occasionally leading him to the genre-watering hole of spaghetti westerns and Italian crime films. His hold on the role of King Mongkut in the never-ending stage revivals of The King and I meant D.R. Ford had to time it just right if he were to snag his dream leading man for the role of Father Simeon. Yes, that's right, Father Remus Simeon. After all, The Demon of Noel Crossing was a movie about a Catholic priest performing an exorcism on himself during a return to his hometown for Christmas. At least, that was the plot on the surface. I've spoken to several sources, exhausted sources of sources even. Every single one of them confirmed to me what was really going on was some form of summoning ceremony disguised as a film shoot. DRF was adamant about Brynner joining their fold. Whatever their fold was exactly was never made crystal clear to me. I ended up finding out all on my own. Lucky me. While Yul Brynner's last theatrical film, Death Rage, was in theaters in the brisk autumn of 1976, D.R. Ford made his play for Brynner to be in his ambitious horror film. I mean, if you really think about it, Yul Brynner, as a stoic Catholic priest fighting to vanquish the evil inside of him during Christmas sounds like an amazing film. Potentially amazing, of course. Too bad it was all a lie. Money was thrown around, yes, lots of money. More money than was normally bandied about for a leading man in any size film at the time. I believe that's really partly why it was never printed in the trades. It was a number so large that everyone from Variety to The Hollywood Reporter balked and thought it to be a practical joke or a publicity stunt. Brynner was convinced to postpone preparations to reprise his famous role in The King and I briefly so he could travel to Bumpus, Virginia to star in his first horror film. Folks surrounding him apparently convinced the legend that this could be his exorcist and launched him back into the limelight. It worked, regardless of sincerity or accuracy. I've spoken to most of the crew of the film over the years. Most of them. Some I've heard their account secondhand long after their death. A lot of them were part of the old Hollywood system and were already on borrowed time. Others were young and eager beavers, high on the current studio system of cutting-edge method acting and narrative experimentalism. It was an odd melding of cultures and personalities. The ones still left alive won't talk to me anymore. They tell me it's bad for them and too late to do anything for me. Whatever that means. There was cinematographer Lucio Gonzetti, a veteran cameraman of Italian crime films and action films for decades. This was his first gig as DP, and to say he was more than a little amped about it would be a gross understatement. Makeup and special effects artist Maria Fancher was one of the bright-eyed young ones. Originally a stage makeup artist out of New England, she packed up everything and moved to LA in a last-ditch attempt to make something of a career in film, even though becoming a successful movie makeup artist as a woman back then was less likely than pulling an actual makeup kit out of your own ass. It wasn't impossible per se, but highly unlikely. D.R. Ford's right-hand man was the screenwriter himself, Nick Simon. They were seemingly inseparable. From all accounts, shared the same mind. It sounds cute as an expression, but after all my research, I think they actually were the same mind. No one can seem to contact Simon, not even my deep cover contacts, the ones who never reveal their names. When I finally got around to asking one of my sources why DRF insisted on shooting the film on Christmas, I was told matter-of-factly that the pagans who originally celebrated the holiday that was eventually bastardized and rebranded as a Christian holiday knew that the time of year was attuned to a specific doorway that could only be opened on or as close to the day as possible. What doorway? I had to ask. The one to the abyss. That was their answer. The particular source of mine was a Lost Films crusader known only as Penitent One on the dark web. They stopped responding to my emails after that. To say my contacts were dwindling at that point would be a bit of an exaggeration. They weren't exactly growing either. I knew I had few sources that would stick with me to the end, if only for them to know that I now see what they see. Camaraderie, if you will. If there can be such a thing when it comes to... Hold on. I'll be right back. That's funny. I could have sworn I heard someone on my front room. Then when I was in my front room, I was certain I heard someone in here. In my study. With you. Are you sure you didn't hear anything unusual? Very well. I'll take your word for it. Now, where was I? My contacts. Ah, yes, they were a most motley variety of former crew members and urban legend investigators. A few journalists in there for good measure, and some unconfirmed reports of actual cast members. I felt like I had a proper handle on the breadth of information and opinions that were out there. It helped me form my own ideas and theories of what really happened on that film set. I knew I had to make a documentary out of all this. Why had no one else thought of it yet? Maybe they had. Maybe there was a reason one never materialized. I panicked. What if everyone who was still alive had already been interviewed by some hack vlogger, and now the window had closed for the chance at a true account of this storied cinematic debacle? I made my intentions known in the circles I frequented online, both in the legal and illegal realms. Shortly afterwards, I was contacted by my last and best source on the film, known simply as Modrinicht76. They seemed to know almost everything about the shoot. Pre-production, principal photography, how it all ended, the aftermath, the works. It was astonishing. And it was frightening. I asked my other contacts about this Modrinicht76 and the validity of their claims. Some warned me to stop talking to them. Others ghosted me completely. Jealousy? Competitive passive aggressiveness? Maybe it was one of them playing a prank on me, goading me into going whole hog on a boondoggle of a documentary they knew would end up in wild goose territory. Looking back on it all, I wish any or all of those notions were indeed true. The lure of the perfect urban legend meets reality documentary was too strong for me to resist. I had to know it all. My encounters with Modrinicht76 usually began in the dark early hours of morning, between 1 and 3, and lasted until the peaking rays of dawn, for days on end. Through it all, I couldn't glean one single shred of information on who exactly Modrinicht76 was. D.R. Ford? Nick Simon? I became so obsessed and tuned into my conversations with them that in fleeting moments, I almost convinced myself it was YUL Brynner himself. It's insane, I know, but you really need to know how strong the lure of this whole thing was for me. This was the Mount Everest of lost films and the motherlode when it came to obscure urban legends. The Roanoke Island or the Orang Medan of the film world. Some film historians or critics won't even carry on a conversation with you if you so much as hint mentioning the Demon of Noel Crossing. One of YUL Brynner's biographers and even his own son, Rock, refused to believe any inkling of the film being real. No one seems to remember the director or screenwriter even existing in the first place. Except in my circles, the hidden circles you won't find mentioned on Reddit or 4chan. There are pictures. I've seen them. Pictures of the chapel they built on the outskirts of Bumpus. Pictures of YUL Brynner smiling on set. Pictures of YUL Brynner not smiling on set. Pictures of YUL Brynner looking at someone just off set out of the corner of his eye. Something. And pictures of the fire that destroyed the church set and killed 13 members of the cast and crew. Oh, you didn't hear about that part in the papers, did you? Neither did anyone else for that matter. It effectively ended the shoot for good. The surviving cast and crew were compensated for their time. The town of Bumpus was paid for any damages incurred, and D.R. Ford and Nick Simon faded from the narrative. From any narrative, for that matter. There are no more mentions, even in the most labyrinthine of investigative circles of DRF, Simon, or any future projects they might have tried to shepherd into existence. They were just gone. Done. Poof. A few intrepid researchers tried to look for DRF and Simon, once we knew of never returned from their travels. Another did, but soon went completely insane. You can visit him at the Piedmont Psychiatric Institute, but make sure you don't bring anything sharp or have an affinity for uninterrupted sleep without any nightmares. I chose to forgo a visit and take that particular source's word for it. The theory still persists to this day that DRF and Simon are the same person. No one interviewed in any capacity ever recalled seeing Ford and Simon in the same room, or sometimes even seeing Simon at all in the flesh. Was he a conjuring of DRF's design? A split personality created to deal with the glorious burden of being a visionary screenwriter? Though hide nor hair has never been found of DRF or Mr. Simon, one thing was indeed found: the film itself. I have yet to see it, but a whole reel of dailies for the Demon of Noel Crossing surfaced about 15 years ago in the National Archives at Mount Pony in Culpeper, Virginia, just an hour away from Bumpus. All reports, about 5 in all, of the footage seem to purport that Yul Brynner was giving an all-time performance as the tortured priest battling possession deep within his soul on Christmas of all holidays. One source said it was like It's a Wonderful Life meets The Verdict with The Exorcist thrown in for good measure. I envy the eyes that laid their gaze on such a rare find. I think that's why Brynner seems so crestfallen in certain interviews for his latest run on The King and I, following the failed film that no one would ever know about. I think something out there appreciated his performance, and still does. They feed off of it, after all. Doorways don't open themselves, you know. You've probably been thinking this whole time one prevailing thought, one nagging notion that won't go away. Why Yul Brynner? What's the connection? Well, I'm sure you're expecting some 11th hour tie-in that links everything together. The linchpin in the whole sordid story that gives us all that much sought after, aha moment. I'm sorry to say, there isn't one. Except for the fact that D.R. Ford was a collector of actors. No, more like movie stars, Hollywood legends. I can't be 100%, but from many of the accounts and conversations I've had over these long handful of years, whoever or whatever is truly behind Ford and Simon and their odd productions gains power from high celebrity status. The adoration of fans, the sheer skill and charisma involved in being a bankable movie star has a cosmic commodity, apparently. I know what you're thinking. What? Before Brynner, they tried it with William Holden, of all people. DRF was all set to direct a tropical horror thriller called Savage Solstice in 1970, starring Mr. Holden as a professor of anthropology searching for a missing link troglodyte terrorizing a coastal town in Argentina. Sensing a pattern here? Horror films shooting in out-of-the-way locations and starring big-name movie stars? All for what? Well, look at the filming dates. Summer solstice, winter solstice. Are you getting it yet? The solstice and equinox days on our calendar are a veritable Russian roulette of dimensional doorways if you know how to open them. Kill a bunch of people at the right time and wait for said door to swing wide open just for you. The shoot for Savage Solstice ended abruptly when the second unit camera crew drowned during a freak tropical storm. 12 dead in all. Cameramen, stunt drivers, production assistants, all lost to the depth. It became pretty clear after I found this bit of info what was really going on. No one had any intention of finishing these films. They were all a ruse to set up a sacrifice in order to open a portal to an abyss long forgotten by mortal memories. I checked, and I couldn't find any proof of any odd horror film shoots occurring on any equinox during the last 60 years. I called in my ever-reliable sources, hoping and praying they would come up with the same goose eggs that I had in my latest searches. Instead, 1949. Fay Wray was set to star in the noir chiller The Man with the Silver Hands near Thunder Bay, Ontario. I think you know where this is going by now. I wanted to pretend it was all a dream when I heard what had happened. A twin-engine seaplane carrying camera equipment and supplies for the shoot crashed into the set, killing 11 cast and crew members. That was the end of that shoot, as you might have already surmised. The lump in my throat was insurmountable. My heart raced. Could this really be happening in my time? Why was I the one to witness this madness? Before I could even research whether or not there was ever a horror film shoot on a fall equinox, I received a message. As if on cue. It was from Modernect 76. They were back. The message was simple. No. Not yet. It was too much. Someone or something pretending to be an ally, a friend, was manipulating me, goading me into uncovering the full extent of what lay just underneath the surface. That whole iceberg theory, it was all right there. A massive, festering iceberg made of evil and sinister intent just waiting to be stumbled upon by the fake brave and the stupid tough. I feel like I've been... Wait. Do you hear that? You must hear that this time. It was unmistakable. Is it just me? Something is in my living room again. Just wait right there. Don't go anywhere. Are you sure you didn't hear anything? I swear that noise traced back to here just like last time. Did you see anything? Someone is indeed messing with me. With us. Oh yes, you're just as much a part of this as I am now. What's that? Oh no, there's no getting out of it anymore. It's too late for that. You've already heard too much. Might as well see it to the end. At least we're not alone in this, right? Curiosity loves company. That's the saying, correct? I think it is. Yes. Yes, it most definitely is. Copacetic? Excellent. Where was I? Right. Fall equinox. It must be happening soon. There's no other way around it. It's coming for us all, and we have to stop it. Yes, we. I need your help in this. We can make sure the fourth door never opens. Whatever it is, it cannot be a good thing for this world. We have to find Ford, or Simon, or both. Modronik 76. They must hold the key. Maybe they are Ford, or Simon. Or they are all one. It all makes sense now. Before I forget, though, I'm reminded of a rare interview with Brynner in his later years. It was after he was diagnosed with lung cancer, but before it rendered him at a disadvantage to speak. A journalist for a local affiliate news magazine show asked him if he had any stories about unfinished or stalled projects in his career. It remains unknown whether or not the interviewer knew about the Demon of Noel Crossing or was just fishing for an interesting or fun answer to his seemingly innocent question. Regardless of intent, Brynner's reaction to the question is the most interesting part of the video. For just the briefest of seconds, Brynner's eyes darted to a corner of the room never shown. If you're not fully paying attention to the clip, you'd absolutely miss it. It's so fleeting that's what makes it so alarming. Who is he looking at? What was he looking at? Did something follow him all those years after the disaster in Bumpus? Lurking in the shadows, watching his every move? Did something follow the others as well? YUL Brynner died of lung cancer in 1985. William Holden died after falling and hitting his head on a table while he was heavily intoxicated. The year was 1981. Fay Wray died peacefully in her sleep in 2004. So what's the connection? A good number of sources insist that Ray knew what was transpiring. Brynner and Holden were less receptive to the ceremony. Thus, the shadows followed them for the rest of their lives, until they died under less than peaceful circumstances. Tasteless? Where's the proof, you say? I sympathize with you in your line of logic. During one of Holden's drunken benders near the end of his life, more than one acquaintance recalls him ranting about a film that no one could ever place happening, a movie in South America. People killed, something that wouldn't leave him be despite him staying quiet for a decade. It just added to the urban legend of D.R. Ford and the Four Doorways to the Abyss. Until Brynner's death, many claimed he had strange episodes of seeing someone that wasn't there in the room with him, if only for mere seconds, but seconds nonetheless. What did Holden and Brynner do that Ray refrained from? Why was she given a long life and they suffered painful deaths? Who would be next? Which star of stage and screen might be the key to the fourth doorway and the catalyst for another massacre? You would think that in light of all this, I would find the nearest rock to hide under, get gone, disappear. You would think that, but I feel closer to the truth than any time since I started this journey. This quest for answers. I know that a documentary must happen. Only I can make it manifest. Spread the truth to the whole world. Only then can we prevent the fourth doorway from opening. The fall equinox must be kept sacred. The cinematographer of The Demon of Noel Crossing, Lucio Gonzetti, has agreed to be my cameraman. It took a lot of convincing, but now he sees it my way. He knows the truth is the quickest way to ending all of this. Even though the film's makeup artist, Maria Fancher, killed herself less than a year after the church fire, she still took the time out of her busy schedule to call me personally a few days ago and let me know I had her full support. I can't wait to interview her tomorrow. She sounds anxious to tell me everything. Gonzetti and I are traveling to Bumpus this weekend to document the ruins of the set of The Demon of Noel Crossing. The winter solstice is nigh, and it will be the perfect time to capture the location in all of its ghost-like glory. It's going to be so surreal to see it in the flesh. Feel it. What transpired there more than 40 years ago? Some of my sources say they will meet us there under the cover of night. You're coming too, right? You've come this far, after all. I won't hear anything to the contrary. Your attendance will make our crew a strong 14. On top of that amazing turn of events, Modronex 76 has informed me they plan on fully funding the documentary shoot to the end. Talk about serendipity. It's all coming together. The truth will out all of this evil and suffering, finally. I'm so glad you've agreed to join me on this adventure. There's no turning back, even if you wanted to. Shog-Nagath demands it all be known. The equinox will be kept sacred. For them.